everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest podcast. This episode is going to be a little bit different. And the reason it's going to be a little bit different is because all the other guys were very busy this weekend. And I spent I knew that ahead of time, but I held out hope that I'd be able to get a hold of other content creators and, record a podcast with them. It just did not work out. It's Easter weekend here in the States, and a lot of people were just really, really busy. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different than what we usually do. It's actually going to be kind of like a throwback to my old podcast, which was Nintendo Switchcraft, where, and this isn't going to be just about Nintendo. It's going to be about all of the different parts of the gaming industry. But in that show, 3 times a week, I would sit down and record live, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm live on my YouTube channel. If you are listening to this and you're like, well, I want to check out the podcast live sometime, head over to youtube.com/nerdnest and subscribe. Turn on the bell notifications so that when I do go live, you are notified and hey, all right, well, I'm going to go watch that and hang out with Bill, and then you could be part of the show when I do the show like this. So now that you are all caught up, what are we going to talk about today? Well, one of the things that we are going to talk about today is the fact that Nintendo Switch pre-orders are now officially going to happen. We're going to talk about the Nintendo Direct for Mario Kart World, which I will say I felt like was a little bit underwhelming. I also want to talk about some updates with Xbox, especially when it comes to their mobile app. And then we've got Elder Scrolls 4, not 6. I know a lot of people are waiting for 6, but Elder Scrolls 4 Remake is official. Maybe going to talk about, this day in gaming, which is a topic where I go back and we look at some things that have released on this day a long time ago. And finally, maybe if we have time, we'll get to some upcoming games, that kind of thing. So with all that out of the way, I just want to thank everybody who's here for the live show. Heisenthal's asking if I had a good Easter. I mean, we really don't do much. All of our youngest is almost 17. So the prices are going to be the same. How is Nintendo keeping the prices the same if there's tariffs that are going to be coming in on all of these different countries? Well, number one, it's rumored that Nintendo is trying as hard as they can to ship as many devices as they can here to the States as fast as they can before the tariffs actually start. So because of that, maybe they're going to be able to get these devices into the country. They're all on boats and planes and right now and stuff like that right now, getting them into the country before the actual tariffs start, and then they can avoid that tax. So that's one way that they're looking at doing it. Another way, and this is not speculative in this case, another way that they're kind of dealing with the idea of these taxes is they're keeping the main system the same price, but all of the accessories have gone up in price. So, for example, I'm going to bring this up on screen for the YouTube people so that you can see the same thing that I'm looking at here. The Nintendo Switch 2 is $449.99. The Nintendo Switch 2 and Mario Kart World bundle is $499.99. So those prices are exactly the same prices that were announced when Nintendo first announced the Nintendo Switch 2. I don't know about you. Personally, I'm going for the Mario Kart World bundle because I want to save $30, and I don't really care about physical media, even though I know a lot of people do care about physical media. Physical media, I do agree, is important, and I want it to be there for everybody, but I personally prefer the convenience, especially on a portable system, of not having to worry about swapping game cards around, and the added bonus that I'll be saving $30 instead of getting the $80 version of the game. I'll be getting a $50 version of the game, and to me, that makes a lot of sense. Not talking about game prices really all that much because we have beaten that horse to death. But now let's take a look at the prices of the accessories. We've got the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller, which is $84.99. I really want one of those because I really liked the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, but that is really expensive, and I'm betting that there's going to be a lot of third-party stuff, like there's going to be tons of third-party stuff that might be even better than the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. So I think I'm going to wait and hold off on picking one of those up. If you want to get an extra pair of Joy-Cons, they're $94.99. The charging grip is $40. The Joy-Con 2 strap is $14. And I'm not going to read all of these off to you, but there's a bunch of stuff and the prices for all of them went up. Basically, what Nintendo is doing is they're saying, look, if we try to if we just sell the Nintendo Switch and we raise the price of that to deal with the tariffs, well, we're going to sell less of them. You can buy the system and not buy any accessories and be perfectly fine. So if they raise the price on those things, it's going to look better for Nintendo. And they really want to come out of the gate strong. They want to launch strong and have lots of systems out in the hands of customers. And the accessories are not nearly as important. So I think that is the good move, which is odd for me to say about Nintendo, because I feel like for them, it's been bad move after bad move after bad move recently anyway. And I say that as somebody who is a huge fan of Nintendo. I am not here to just, say how awful Nintendo is, because they make really, really good games. And I want to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 for their first party games. Am I really going to be playing third party stuff on the Nintendo Switch 2? Probably not. I'll play that on PC. I'll play that on my Steam Deck, on my ROG Ally X. I've got so many different places that I can play those games on. Basically, the Switch 2 is going to be a Nintendo system for me. All right, we got some super chats came in from the people who are here live. And by the way, there's 139 people here right now. Thank you so much for coming to this live stream that I didn't tell anybody about ahead of time. You guys are friggin' awesome. All right. Super chat, $5 super chat from Yum Yum Game. That's a fun name. They said, I think Nintendo is pouring all their Switch 2 systems into North America due to scalpers. FYI, some countries are delayed in release. Would you agree? Well, I don't know if I agree. I think that they're pouring them into North America because this is a huge market for them. And yes, they are going to try and combat scalpers. They also have that one way where you can supposedly be notified by Nintendo when you can pre-order if you subscribe to Nintendo Switch Online for at least a year and have at least, and I could be wrong about this, but I think it's 50 hours of gameplay on the Nintendo Switch 1. And if you meet those things, then you may be able to pre-order directly from Nintendo, and no scalpers are going to be able to do that. So I'm absolutely going to be trying to buy directly from Nintendo. But they said, go to our website and register your interest. And I did that, and I haven't heard anything back at this point. So I'm betting that I'm probably, I think they said that they were going to rank people who have more playtime higher. And I got to be honest, since I got my Steam Deck, I haven't really touched the Nintendo Switch, except for first-party Nintendo stuff that I can't play anywhere else. So I don't have that much game time in the Nintendo Switch in the past 2 or 3 years. So I think that I may have to wait in order to pre-order directly through Nintendo. Are they getting these things in to beat scalpers? Maybe, but I personally think it's to beat tariffs, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for the super chat, Yum Yum Games. I appreciate it. And Heisenthal just asked about Nintendo's reservations, which I just covered. Wesley Rhodes says, does Nintendo never send review units? Well, they certainly wouldn't. They wouldn't send review units to me. I've been very, very critical of Nintendo. There's, you know what? Actually, no, that's a bullshit response, and I shouldn't have even said that. Yes, I have been critical of Nintendo, but I've been critical of a lot of other companies that still send me stuff. I know that there is this idea that a lot of people have that people who review devices will only say good things because they're afraid that the companies that are sending them these devices will stop sending them. And even though I've said awful things about Asus in the past, but, you know, and I feel like it was deserved. It's not like I was just being a dink. You know what I mean? You know, they still send me stuff. In fact, the new Wi-Fi system that I was talking about was sent to me by Asus for a video. I'm making a video about, you know, things that you might upgrade that you might not think about. And Asus said, well, here, we'll send you these. And they don't get any input on the video or anything like that. And, you know, if the experience was terrible, then I would tell you that the experience was terrible. And Asus would probably take that feedback in stride. I think that a lot of companies are really good like that. And if any company wasn't good like that, I wouldn't work with them. So do I think that Nintendo not sending me a review unit has anything to do with that I've been critical of them? No, I don't think so. I think number one, they don't know who I am. Number two, if they did know who I was, I do talk about emulation devices a lot, and I do emulate Nintendo games, not new Nintendo games. I don't emulate Nintendo Switch games, but when I emulate on, you know, this is the Pocket DMG that I'm holding up for the video viewers. Like if I unlock this, I almost guarantee that this, if I could remember my code, there we go. Yeah. Here, I'll show the people who are watching. You might not be able to see it actually because it's too bright, but I'll hold it up. You can see I'm playing Donkey Kong. Like I'm emulating a Nintendo game right now. Like that was the last game that I was playing. So let me shut that off because otherwise I'll start playing. I think that's a reason that Nintendo might not send me a review copy or a review unit. The other reason is because they don't know who I am. I'm a tiny little YouTube channel. Anyway, so that's the answer to that question. Let's see what other people are talking about here in our live chat. Oscar Sanchez says, Asus messed with my first Ally. Yeah, they got a lot of blowback from the ROG Ally. And basically the way that things get, like with their like warranty stuff, I don't remember it all off the top of my head, but you know, Gamers Nexus kind of called them to the carpet, and we talked about all of the things that they did wrong on my podcast many times, and they still send me stuff. So I don't think that has anything to do with it. Heisenthal says, maybe the lack of a review units is to deter as much as possible the paperclip hack from leaking too early. Okay. I'm going to say that I don't know what the hell the paperclip hack is, but I am very interested in it. But I think it's time that we move on to the next topic because I don't want to dwell too long. And the next topic is the Mario Kart World Direct. When Nintendo showed off the Nintendo Switch 2, they specifically said, listen, like not during the event, but after the event, they were asked, how come Mario Kart World is $80? And they said, you know, variable pricing, and everybody out there got very excited about the idea. And when I say everybody, I mean the publishers. They got very excited about the idea of variable pricing because variable pricing means that you can really get more money out of the consumer. And Nintendo just made Mario Kart World $80. Again, I don't want to get into it. I've beaten that horse to death. But they also said, well, we've got a Nintendo Direct coming for Mario Kart World, and that Nintendo Direct it's going to show you why it's $80. And I was like, okay, well, get ready to show me why it's $80 then. So I watched the Nintendo Direct for Mario Kart. It was about 15 minutes long. I think overall, it was a decent Direct. I didn't get a whole lot of new information out of it. I know that they showed off that there's P switches throughout the world that you drive around and you hit those P switches, and then it gives you like a little mission, and that's awesome. That sounds really, really fun. I don't know how much I will really do that. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think I'll probably just get in and just do multiplayer racing all the time, and I won't do any of the other stuff. And after watching the 15-minute direct, I came away thinking I still don't understand why Nintendo thinks that this is an $80 game. Personally, I think that the reason is, and I've talked about this before, because this is the kind of game that you want to play online. And if you're playing online, that means you're connecting through Nintendo servers. And if you're connecting through Nintendo servers, then unless I'm wrong, it's hard to emulate because then you can't connect to the servers. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't think that I am. And because of that, they know that piracy for a game like this won't be very high. So it makes it easier for them to then raise the price of it because they know that if people want to play this game, they're going to pay $80. I also saw some people talking about the idea that it's only $10 more. No, it's not. The last Mario Kart game was $60. This one is $80. So it's $20 more. That is a 30% increase in price. I can understand. I think that if Nintendo had shipped this game for $70, that's only $10 more. I think a lot of people would have just been fine with that. They would have had no problem with it being $70. It's the fact that it's $80, a $20 jump in price. And I think that that is just a little too far, but that's just my opinion. And, let's hear from everybody who's here watching the live stream. What do you guys think about the price? All right. So, let's see. James Lewis corrected my math. It's a 33% increase. You're right. And I call myself a school teacher. Yes, I do call myself a school teacher, but I don't teach math. I teach science. And in my class, I tell my students all the time, I can't do math. So I grab a calculator and I use a calculator to do the math. But mostly that was me being lazy. Jared White says, I think people will pay it. I know people will pay it. Even though, every YouTuber, I don't consider myself a YouTuber. I consider myself a podcaster, but that's beside the point. Every YouTuber is complaining about the price, and there's a lot of people who are watching all of this stuff, and they're complaining about the price. I think that the average customer will, number one, they will buy the bundle, which means that Mario Kart is only $50. And I think that's another reason that Nintendo did this. In fact, I anticipate that maybe not all, but many of Nintendo's flagship games, the ones that they decide to charge $80 for, they will also have bundles. And they'll say, well, you can get the bundle for $50. Another thing that I wonder about is with the original Nintendo Switch, they had this thing that was part of Nintendo Switch Online that gave you access to these tickets that you could buy. And you would buy the tickets. You could buy the tickets. It would come with 2 of them for $100. And then you could use those tickets to buy games. And it could be full price games that are usually $60. So essentially you were saving $10 or $20 by buying the tickets through Nintendo Switch Online. It was actually a really, really good deal. I don't think that they will do that for $100, but I do think that they will do that for maybe 110 or 120 or maybe 100. I'm not sure what exactly the cutoff would be, but I expect that to come back because that will encourage people to join Nintendo Switch Online. That's number one. Number two, and that means that they're getting money every single month, whether or not I buy a new game. And then number two, I forgot my second point, but I think you guys get where I was going with this. This is one of the reasons why it's better to have other people on the show and not just me, because then I have people to bounce ideas off of. All right. Wesley Rhodes says, I think the gaming industry was looking for an excuse to raise game prices. Absolutely. They weren't expecting Nintendo to do it first. Everyone was anticipating GTA 6 being a $100 game. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, $100, 100%. Absolutely. And honestly, I think the GTA 6 might end up costing more than that. Or they'll split it up into single player and multiplayer. And single player will be $100 games, and multiplayer will be on some other price. I don't think that they would do that for 100, because then they also have all of the other, what's the word I'm looking for, microtransactions that they can use in that game to make a bunch of money. Now, I was listening to a podcast this weekend, and I think it was because I listened to a couple podcasts this weekend. And I think that one of them, I think it was Friends Per Second, which is a really good podcast. And one of the things that they said on there was really, really smart, because this is the discussion of price with the Nintendo Switch games or Switch 2 games is not black and white. As easy as it is for everybody to say, oh, Nintendo bad, it's not black and white. Because when you think of it this way, traditionally, other companies get that extra money because gaming, making video games is an expensive thing to do. They get that extra money through microtransactions. And you can say, all right, well, here's what I want. I want video games that are good to be made by people who are paid well and who do not have to work a billion hours. And then I also want these games to never go up in price. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes sense that games go up in price. However, let's add a couple other things in there. Good games made by people who are paid well, who don't have to work a billion hours in order to make those games. The price never goes up and doesn't have any microtransactions. I think of all of these things, it's hard to have all five. But you can get rid of a couple of those things. Now, I would gladly pay more money and not have microtransactions in it. And that's what I think we're seeing with Mario Kart World. Would I prefer to have microtransactions in Mario Kart World and have the game be a little bit cheaper? I think I would, because I know that I personally am very resistant to microtransactions, if that makes any sense. Other people will spend a bunch of money on microtransactions, like they'll get different hats for their character, and as long as it doesn't affect gameplay, I couldn't give a shit. It's fine. But I would prefer to have the game be a little bit cheaper because I'm resistant to microtransactions. Nintendo decided, well, we're just not going to do microtransactions, and we'll raise the price instead. And I'm conflicted about how I feel about that. And here's why. Nobody else is going to do what Nintendo just did. Nintendo raised the price of their game, and there's no microtransactions in it. Are they going to add courses later? I think that they will, but that's DLC, which is different than microtransactions, in my opinion. But if you look at Ubisoft, EA, all the other, like 2K, all the other companies out there, the publishers, what they're going to do is they're going to raise the price and add in microtransactions. And I think my brain jumps to that and says, well, that sucks. I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay $80 for a game and have microtransactions on top of it. And so part of me is just automatically blaming Nintendo because they were the ones that raised the price. But in reality, we were all probably going to see the price go up anyway. Jasper in chat says, microtransactions lower the quality of a game, even for those who don't buy. The dev now has incentives other than make the best game. Well, yes, they can. That doesn't mean that it always does. So, for example, cosmetic microtransactions, where you're wearing a blue shirt instead of a green shirt, who cares? That doesn't affect gameplay. I can play the game without worrying about that. It's when the microtransactions affect gameplay in some way. Like when a fighting game doesn't give you all of the characters, and then they bring out a new character, and maybe that character is really powerful and it feels almost like it's pay to win, which I'm not really a huge fan of. Astigos in chat is saying DLC are macro transactions. That's funny. I guess they are certainly transactions. Yes. All right. Let's move away from Nintendo. We've been talking about them for a bit, and we're going to switch over, and I want to talk about Xbox. This is actually really interesting. Microsoft, they've been doing some weird stuff, some stuff that I think that might actually pay off for them down the road. And it's not been obvious how they were going to do this. I feel like Microsoft, they bet big on cloud gaming. And as somebody who has played a lot of games in the cloud, I did a bunch of stuff on Stadia. I have access to GeForce Now. I tried xCloud. All of the ones that I've tried, Microsoft's iteration was the worst. But I have to be fair, I haven't really tried their stuff in probably a couple years at this point. Like I don't stream Microsoft stuff. So maybe at this point it's much better. But Microsoft, they saw the writing on the wall. They said, okay, well, we lose and lose and lose. We keep losing the console wars. So we got to pivot. And they pivot to PC. And they pivot to mobile, which is why they bought, like everybody focuses on Activision as the reason that they bought it, or they focus on Blizzard as the reason that they spent $70 billion. But I'm sure that those were obviously things that looked attractive to them. But the real reason that they bought was probably King, because King, the people behind, I think it's, what the hell are they called? Candy Crush? Man, they make so much money. And that's why they bought them. And, Microsoft has said, look, we're putting out our own app. Let's take a look at the article here. It says, this month brings a variety of exciting updates across our gaming platforms, including easy and convenient purchasing within the Xbox app on mobile. So now, if you download the Xbox app on mobile, on your phone, you can now buy games and then you can stream them. This is one of my biggest complaints about Microsoft's way of doing cloud streaming is that it was like you could only stream the games that were on Game Pass. But if I bought a game, I couldn't stream that. And that really, to me, disincentivized me from buying games from them. There's a completely different discussion that should happen around whether or not Game Pass discourages people from buying games. I think the answer is yes. Like I have an Xbox Series X. I bought 2 games for it. All the other games that I play on it are Game Pass games. I never buy games on Microsoft's because I pay for Game Pass, and most of the games that I want to play are going to be on there. Anyway, so when Stadia was around, you bought games and then you could stream those games. And a lot of people didn't like that business model, but that also meant that those games that you bought, they couldn't take them out of rotation. Of course, hindsight's 2020 because Google gave up on Stadia before it even had a chance to really get its legs underneath it. And that's why it failed miserably, because Google just didn't have the intestinal fortitude to stick with it. Well, Microsoft seems like they are committed because they realize they don't have a good way for them to win the console wars. They feel like they have to pivot to something else, which is what they're doing with cloud. So Xbox app on mobile, you can now buy games, join Game Pass, and redeem perks directly from the Xbox app. Now, I don't know off the top of my head if it will be more expensive to buy them on iOS and Android. Because typically what happens is when you, wrong button, typically what happens is when you buy something that you could otherwise buy through, let's say, not when you buy something using your phone that you could otherwise buy through other means. So for example, let's say you're watching this stream right now and you're like, oh, I'm going to do a super chat. If you're doing a super chat and you do it through your phone, I think you pay more because Google wants some of that money. Apple wants some of that money. But, and it might not, I mean, maybe that's not a perfect example because Google owns or runs Android, and so maybe that doesn't increase the price. Here, let me give you another example. If, let's say, instead of YouTube, I'm streaming on Twitch. And when I'm streaming on Twitch, if you want to like tip me and you do it and you use your phone, either through Google or through iOS, you pay 30% more. If you just did it through the website, you don't pay 30% more. So my question is when you buy these games that are rolling out soon on iOS and Android, are you going to pay more if you purchase these things through the Google Play Store, like through the app or through the iOS store? That's something you definitely want to consider. I will say it's going to be certainly more convenient to buy through the phone, but I think you're better off just going to a website and doing it that way instead. All right. Now, they also have shown that you can now stream. Oh my God, this window. I got to move this window out of the way. You can also stream. I have no good place to put this window. You can also stream the games that you've purchased on your Xbox console. This I don't really see the point of. Sure, you can stream and play the game instantaneously, or you can download the game and then play it later. Like, how much time is it really going to take you to download that game, especially if you have fast enough internet that streaming gives you a good experience? I don't see the point of doing this. However, Microsoft also recently said how happy they were with how well their apps are doing on smart TVs, because so many people don't have extra set-top boxes like an Apple TV or a Chromecast or anything like that. And I just think I think that dumb TVs are better, even though you can't really get them anymore. My daughter is saying hello, Hammy. Good to see you. All right, where was I? Okay, that's Microsoft stuff. You can also, I'm going to go ahead and move on from Microsoft stuff. Oh no, this is still part of Microsoft stuff. Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, the remake is real. The leaks are confirmed, and I could not be more excited. We're going to find out more about that tomorrow. And I love the first game. I will say, looking at the screenshots, it seems like they've desaturated stuff, which is kind of disappointing, because when you look at the side-by-side screenshots, which are not actually in this article that I brought up, I don't know if you can even get to those anymore, but like on one, like the old ones were like green and lush, and the new ones kind of look brown and dead. And that's kind of disappointing to see the same location just be desaturated. It feels very much like a early 2000s era game looking all desaturated like that. But Elder Scrolls 4, more on Oblivion coming out tomorrow. We're going to find out. Now, here's my question to all of you, and let me know what you think in chat for the 200 people that are here. Do you think that we're going to get the game tomorrow, or are they just going to do the announcement tomorrow? For me, I think that we're going to get a shadow drop. And here's the reason why. Because we've recently had some more leaks about the file size. And I don't think that we would get that file size leak of, by the way, 120 gigs. I don't think we would get that if it wasn't already really, really close. If we don't get it tomorrow, I think we'll get it within a week. But I hope that I'm not wrong about that. But let's talk about that file size real quick. 120 gigs. I can't remember off the top of my head. Can anybody tell me in the chat exactly how many gigs the original Oblivion was? All right, so people are saying that it's going to be a shadow drop. I can't see says it's going to be a shadow drop. Jason Ottenson says, I'm excited to play it again. Wesley Rhodes says the game will drop. It was totally confirmed by Redditors. Well, there you have it. It was on the internet. It must be true. Matt Guido says, I agree. I think they will drop it tomorrow. And Omar says, hopefully they see reactions to the color changes and do some fixes. No, I don't think that they need to do fixes just because we personally don't like the look of the kind of desaturated tones. It also could be like weather systems or something like that. Like maybe they have seasons in there now, and that's why it looks kind of brownish instead of green and lush. But I mean, those are artistic choices. And I don't think that we should expect artistic choices to be changed because we don't agree with them. A perfect example would be the end of Mass Effect 3. Like, most people were really unhappy with the end of that game, and then they went back and like changed it after the fact. And I just think that was just one of the lamest things that you could do. Okay, so Oblivion Game of the Year edition is 4.6 gigabytes. 4.6 gigabytes. That is a ridiculous change. Let me bring up my calculator real quick. Calculator. And let's see, 4.6. 120 divided by 4.6. 26 times. That is 26 times bigger than the original base game. And I'm assuming that's because of a bunch of really, really nice upgraded textures. I mean, let's be honest. Oblivion was an ugly game. It was a great game, but it was pretty ugly. So I absolutely think that we're going to see some massive improvements in how this game looks. 8-Bit Mako says, how much bigger than Skyrim is it then? When you say how much bigger, do you mean how many hours can you play it for? Or do you mean how much bigger is the world? And in that case, I have no idea about either of those. Because, we'll find out tomorrow. As long as it has all of the same stuff, then I'm happy. Some people are wondering if it's going to have what's the word I'm looking for? All the DLC included. I think that we'll have some DLC included and some DLC won't be. And now people in chat are bringing up the next thing that I was going to talk about. How much is this game going to cost? And I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what you guys think is a fair price. I also want to know what you're willing to pay. Because I think a fair price is hard for us to nail down yet because we haven't seen what this game looks like. We don't know what they've really done here. We don't know how much extra stuff that they've done on top of what they already had. But typically for like a remaster, I'm thinking like $50. And then the remaster definitive edition or like the more expensive edition, I think probably $70. I think that would be fair. The absolute maximum that I'm willing to spend on Oblivion is probably $60. And I'm not getting the more expensive edition that has DLC and stuff. I'll just wait because I know me. I'm going to get distracted. I'm not going to get all the way through that game. And I'm not going to get to the DLC. That's something I know about myself. I'll play it for probably about 20 hours or so, and then I'll move on to something else. All right. So Real Nerd Ethan says Skyrim Special Edition is 12 gigs, just for reference. Well, that's funny. Nixie says $40. Alex Manning says $50. Walter Hawk says $30 if it's just a remaster is a fair price. Tim says, do you think there will be an in-game shop added like Fallout 4 and Starfield has? Absolutely. They're going to sell you cosmetics for a single-player game, which I don't understand why. Like 90% of that game, you are in first-person mode. You can't see your stuff anyway. But whatever. They're absolutely going to have a store. Anything below 60 is unlikely, according to Matt in chat. Coinator says 60 and 70. Oh, and then they bring up a really great point. I'm not spending any money on this game. Guys, it's on Game Pass. It's a Microsoft game. Microsoft owns Bethesda. So if you subscribe to Game Pass, you don't have to pay anything for this. I've completely forgot about that. I'm going to fire it up on my Xbox. I'm going to fire it up on, well, probably not this, but I'm going to fire it up on whatever devices that I have, but I'm certainly not going to be paying for it if I don't have to. Matt Guido asks a really great question. He said, do you guys think it drops on PlayStation on the same day? Will the game launch concurrently on both systems? I don't think so. I think that Microsoft will launch that game on Game Pass, and then probably 6 months later, I think they'll follow the same path that they did with Indiana Jones. How many months after Indiana Jones came out did they send it to PlayStation? I think that that's the same path that we'll see. Walter Hack says, but here's my question. Will it be a Nintendo Switch 2? Oh, that's a really good question. Will we see Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remastered on Switch 2? I do think that we will. If the Switch can run it, which it's a remaster, so I'm assuming that it will be able to, but time will tell. I don't see any reason why they don't. Microsoft has shown in the past that they understand that when their games are available for more people, they make more money. This is something that Sony and Nintendo do not understand. And I am not saying this as like a Microsoft fanboy, because I think Microsoft has done a whole bunch of stupid moves in recent years. But one thing that they always seem to get right is that they're like, I don't care where you play our games as long as you give us a pile of money for them. And I think that's the right move. I Can't See says, I wonder if they announce it for Switch. Oh, yeah, that's the same question. Won't be installed on a cartridge. Well, 120 gigs? No, it won't be installed on a cartridge. You'll need a big ass SD card for that. Although, this is something that I wonder about, and I've been wondering about a lot with Nintendo, is they have a patent, which I don't like patents for stuff like this, but they have a patent that gives them for a method of upscaling textures. And this is really important. This is different than DLSS. This is different than FSR. This is allowing you to take file sizes for games and shrink them down so that they don't take up so much room on your, on your drive or on your SD card or wherever. They have a patent for taking those smaller files and upscaling them so that they look better. This is different than upscaling the resolution of the game itself. And I wonder if Nintendo is going to license that patent to people who are bringing their games to the Switch 2 in order to keep the size of the games smaller, because the Switch 2 comes with only 256 gigs of storage. Yeah, Justin Lindholm just says 120 gigs, that's almost half the drive of the Switch 2. Switch 2 will probably run into major storage issues early on. Yes, they will, which is why I bought one of these. It's not there yet, but I'll put a link in the description down below. But this is an SD Express card. So when my Switch 2 gets here, I will have 500. I'll have half a terabyte of storage for my Switch instead of just 256. And 256 on an SD Express card is actually pretty decent. I didn't feel like this was too expensive. And the reason that I went with this is because you can get a terabyte one, but those are ridiculously expensive. Which is one thing I like about the Switch 2 requiring these, is because now I think that these will come down in price. I think that these will get cheaper over time. Josh in 1206 says, I want a 512 gigabyte SD Express, but I'll wait to buy one until I fill the 256 internal Switch 2 storage. Yeah, I bought it because I figured that they would be hard to get, and I wanted to be able to talk about it in a video when they come out. But I'll put a link in the description down below after I'm done recording that shows you where I got that. Angry Gnome says, in the past, it hasn't been textures that took up a lot of room, but audio files for multiple languages all on the same install. Well, yeah, one way that you can get around that, and a lot of companies have been doing this, is they've been having those other language files be free DLC, essentially. Grim XR says, those microSD Express cards are going to sell out for months post the Switch 2. Yeah, that's why I bought mine right away. I didn't want to wait. And if they do bring out bigger ones later and they get cheaper, then I can just take that and put it in something else. I can put it in my camera or something if I need to. All right, let's move on. We've talked about a lot about Nintendo and Xbox and Elder Scrolls. Let's talk about this day in gaming history. Guys, there's some really, really important things that happened on April 21st in gaming history. A lot of Nintendo-focused stuff, too. Duck Hunt was released 41 years ago, 1984 in Japan, on the NES or the Famicom. 41 years ago, Duck Hunt. I want a new light gun for consoles. I want consoles to have light guns so that we can play light gun games and have them not be the janky mess that they kind of are. And I just think that light guns could be so freaking cool. So I had so much fun playing Duck Hunt back in the day. I'm curious, what is your favorite light gun game? Let me know in the comment section or in chat. What's your favorite light gun game? Duck Hunt was awesome. Hogan's Alley I also loved, but I think that my favorite one was probably Operation Wolf or Lethal Enforcers. Both of those were really, really fun. Now, I'm not counting arcade games because those you could only play for a little bit. These are the ones that I played at home. Metal Combat with the Super Scope from Angry Gnome. Okay, Angry Gnome, first off, cool name. Secondly, the Super Scope. I loved the Super Scope, and I had the Super Scope, and it had this cool Tetris-like game where you would shoot the blocks, and they were almost made out of glass, it seemed like, and you would shoot the blocks in order to get them to fit into spots, which was really, really fun. Heisenthal says their favorite light gun game was Jurassic Park: The Lost World. Alex Manning says Time Crisis. Time Crisis was cool, but it kind of sucked to play at home. I loved playing it in the arcade, though. For those of you who never played Time Crisis, they had a pedal on the ground, and you could have cover. So you could like hide behind cover, and then you'd step down on the pedal, and your character would stand up, and you could shoot, and then you take your foot off the pedal. Your character would go behind cover again, and you could reload. It was really, really fun. I Can't See says, does anyone know the use of the second controller in Duck Hunt? I believe that you would control the ducks. I can't remember, though. Wolf was a C64 joystick for me. Oh, wow. I can't imagine playing that on this with a joystick. No, thank you. And then the Tech Enthusiast says their favorite light gun game was House of the Dead. All right, moving on. We also had the 36 years ago, the Game Boy DMG on this day in 1989 in Japan, not in the States, but the original Game Boy, the first real handheld gaming system that had interchangeable cartridges. At that point, I didn't have a Game Boy. I didn't get one until much later, but man, I put so many hours into my Game Boy. Absolutely love that. Scrolling through this list of, and by the way, I'm just going to copy and paste this list into the live chat. So people, if people want to look at this list, they can, just don't leave, stick around, but I'm scrolling through this list. We got Phantasy Star 3, came out 17 years ago on this day. Something just got delivered to my front door. Hopefully my wife will go grab it. Star Fox Zero for the Wii U was 9 years ago. And anything else on here that is really jumping out at me? No, nothing that jumps out at me. But you know what? I really, really need to see. I need to new light gun games need to happen. Angry Gnome says Game Boy was so good it dominated for an entire decade before being replaced. Yeah, it was really good. I still have mine. It's over there. I also have I can't show it to you, but I have on the wall. I have a broken down game. Did my stuff freeze? Okay, there we go. I have like a broken down Game Boy that's framed. I'll take a picture of it and I'll post it as a. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a post later on today. My friend Rich, who is Fan the Deck, and he's on the podcast all the time. He sent me a message this morning. He said, guys, and then he said, guys, in all caps. And then he said, Bionic Bay is awesome. Now, I don't know anything at all about Bionic Bay, but I watched a quick stream of it. Or not a quick stream. I watched some gameplay of it so that we could see what it looked like. And is this muted? Hopefully it's muted and you guys won't hear it, but let me bring this up on screen. It's a side-scrolling platformer. You have the ability to control time and like gravity. Oh yeah, copyright claim coming for sure, half speed. Yeah. Time and gravity, and use that to, traverse the environment, which looks really cool. But then there's also like this online mode where you're trying to get to the end before the other people who are playing with you. I think it looks really cool. Look forward to next week when we do the podcast with other people and not just me, with Rich on there, because he's been playing it and he says it's just absolutely fantastic. The Artist Returns says, hey, Bill, sorry if you've already answered this. I've been out and about, but what is backwards compatibility going to look like on Switch 2? I think pretty much everything, with few exceptions, everything is going to be compatible. It'll be things like Labo, where the Joy-Cons won't be the right size, or the device won't be the right size for the cardboard nonsense, or things like Ring Fit Adventure, like that kind of thing. But almost everything else is compatible, which is really strange because they are using emulation. The Switch 2 is different enough than the Switch 1 that the Switch 2 is emulating the Switch 1. It's not that it's the same system but more powerful, which is surprising to me. Do you think Oblivion will play on the Steam Deck? It is an Unreal 5 game. I see a lot of people who are worried about that. I say wait and find out because, it may be Unreal 5, but it depends on how well it's optimized. Eddie Marte says, what happened to Blueprints? I've been playing Blueprints. I'm kind of torn on that game. I can see why so many people are really enjoying it. I can only play it if I have something else happening. Like I need some kind of other noise in the house because it's so quiet and nothing happens. Like it's just you walking through rooms and reading stuff. Still, it is enjoyable. I played it for probably about 3 hours so far at this point, and I don't know if I'm going to go back to it. Not because I think it's bad, but just because it's just not pulling me in. It's not grabbing my attention and holding on. Matt Guido says, do you think Steam has any plans of selling the Steam Deck in other stores like Amazon, Best Buy? Geez, I really hope they do. Like that's the thing that is holding Steam Deck back, in my opinion, because the Steam Deck is fantastic. And if they could just get it into a damn Best Buy so people could see it and be like, oh, well, that's interesting. It was really strange the other day. I saw a comment on my YouTube channel where somebody was saying, I would buy the Steam Deck if it wasn't so expensive. I went to Amazon to buy one, and the cheapest one I could find was some price. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, just buy it straight from Valve. But the reason why it's so expensive on other stores is because there's just resellers. Heisenthal says, I think I saw a video somewhere where they said that there was an interview and it wasn't completely emulation for Switch 1 games, more like a Proton layer similar to the Steam Deck. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of times when, and I shouldn't have done this for you guys because I know that you guys know this stuff, but when you're talking to a big audience, you need to simplify things because you can't spend you can't redefine Proton every single time you talk about it. It's just like there's got to be some kind of shorthand for it. And I am 100% aware that Proton is not emulation, but it is close enough that for most people, if I say emulation, they hear, oh, it's pretending to be something else. Okay, I can understand that. And then I don't have to go into the full explanation. Does that make sense? But that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. I know it was weird and I rambled a little bit, but thank you guys for being patient with me, and I will see you on the next one. Hopefully, we got the rest of the crew back for it. See you next time. Stay rad.